Mr. Michael Palin.
I'm really honoured.
They're great, aren't they? It's so lovely having you on the show. Isn't it great to have Michael Palin here, ladies and gentlemen? It really is. I grew up just watching Monty Python and adoring every second of it, and I'm delighted that, you know, you now have this whole second career. It must be strange, because for years people would have come up and said, you know, the Dead Parrot sketch, and I loved you in Python. Now, presumably, there's a whole group of people who know you best for your travelling and your documentaries.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of odd, really, because Python survives, especially in the States, where it's particularly popular.
Yeah.
Whereas here, people now tend to know me more for the journeys. But I've been doing them for about 16 years. So most of the people who originally knew me from Python have died. So, you know, it's just, yeah, people will come up and say, oh, you were ill.
Yeah.
You were ill in that show. And I have to think back to what it is. And mainly it's Around the World in 80 Days, or Crossing the Dow, do you remember?
Yeah, yeah.
And for about 30-second piece to camera, I said, I don't feel very well this morning. I feel really awful. It was very quick. It was a very pathetic piece to camera. And it's known from that day onwards, that time you were ill. Oh, you were ill in that show, weren't you?
But it is weird, because I remember that as being a big part of the show, and it was only a little clip.
It was a tiny clip, but people like illness, they like things to go wrong with you.
Yeah.
And this was a great relief, because I didn't know when I started doing Around the World in 8 Days how I was going to do it. It was all, there was no, you know, there's no precedent for it, there was no script. So I'm just going to go around, ad-lib around the world, it's going to be pathetic. But things went wrong, and that was our saving grace.
But it's quite a weird thing. Why do we like seeing that, do you think? Why do we like seeing the disasters happening, rather than just the splendour of where you are?
Well, I think it's just that that's what happens to people when they travel.
Yeah.
And, you know, the travel brochures and the travel business tell you it's all wonderful, you travel abroad, you leave all your cares behind, everything's fantastic, you're going to lead a totally happy life for 2 weeks, and then you're going to come back. It isn't like that.
Never.
You get there, the hotel isn't built and all that sort of thing, and then you can't get to the toilet, there's no toilet paper. I mean, all these things do happen, and so by acknowledging them, which I did, because they happen to me rather a lot,
yeah,
especially toilets, unfortunately, I found that people sort of felt this was the way it really is, so I was being honest.
Do you get sick often, though? Presumably you know what you're getting yourself into. You have people who help you when you're going away, and you know where you're going. Do you take medication with you, just in case?
Well, yeah, I take everything. I mean, someone once told me, some veteran traveller said, just take everything. Don't worry about trying to be brave. Take every possible pharmaceutical aid you can possibly have. So I have a huge bulging bag, and the more you take, the less likely you are to have to use it.
So
you always have to use the one thing you don't take with you.
But you would now be, I would have thought, the first stop that if anyone wanted travel advice, they would ask you. And I noticed just before the show, someone came up to you and said, oh, I've got a family member who's going off to Nepal soon, and he asked me to ask you for any advice. Do you get that a lot? Does that happen all the time?
Yeah, I do, yes. People want my itinerary, and they want to know, you know, what's the best thing to sort of eat and what's the best thing not to eat. And it's impossible, because it's all different for everybody else. I just say, you know, make sure the BBC pay for everything. Make sure you have a 6-part series at the very least, and you're given a book deal as well, and you'll probably be all right.
Speaking of food, what are the most unusual dishes you've approached? And is there anything you've ever thought, well, you know, I just can't do that?
Well, I mean, a lot of the stuff you eat without knowing what it is until you've eaten it. I mean, there was some stuff I was given in a Peruvian village, and we just landed off this little river, and we scrambled up, and there was a festival in progress, and an old lady comes to me with a little gourd full of this sort of pink mixture in it, and she offers it to me with a big, big smile, you know, and you have to be welcome, you have to be friendly, it's a very hospitable thing. Yeah. I thought, well, I can't ask what's in it, I just drank it, and it was a bit like a sort of yogurt with a slightly acrid touch to it, you know, it was a little bit bitter, but yeah, it was very, very nice. And so I asked what it was, and they said it's a special palm wine they ferment in these villages every St. John's Day or something like that. And it's so important to the life of these villages that every year almost half their entire sugar crop is cut down to ferment this particular wine. And the lady's sort of looking like that. And then they say, but in some areas where there's no sugar growing, it's fermented by the saliva of the old ladies in the village. And I saw her looking like that and all that. And I suddenly realised, so I said, you know, I asked my guide, there's much sugar growing around here? There's a bit of a talk. No. So there you are, I didn't know, so I drank it. It was actually fine. Now I try and get it whenever I can.
Old ladies, because people around the world, it's just cultural differences that we find unusual. They would find stuff over here bizarre as well. But do you miss stuff from England in particular, or do you not, when you're away, you're just in a different mode?
Well, I try and eat whatever I'm given in the place, because it's a bit silly. I remember when we did Around the World in 8 Days, we took food with us, you know, and there's nothing. You're on a boat with these lovely Indian sailors, and they cook up a lovely curry, and one of the crew decides to have his tuna out of a tin from Sainsbury's, and it sort of slides out onto the plate and lies
That's very
there
British,
all
isn't
wobbly.
it? That's very
And
British
it's horrible,
to do that.
so you throw that overboard.
Yeah.
But I do miss things like, I miss marmalade, actually, funny enough. And toast, I mean, silly. You can't get toast anywhere in the world. You try. Could we have some toast, please? And they have some bread. This is toast. No, that's bread. Toast, you burn it, you know, heat it up so it goes away and it comes back incredibly floppy. It's like a face flannel. So you can't get good toast or marmalade.
Toast and marmalade, though, is one of the best.
It's a bit silly. It's a bit old.
Yeah, but you
granny-like, but I mean, you know, that's what we take. We take an actual jar of marmalade or two with us.
Oh, you know what? I think your shows get better and better because I don't know whether it's you're more used to doing it or the team around you. You kind of know what you're doing more now. But the Himalayas, the last series I saw, was fabulous. I thought it was really lovely, and it's such an interesting choice of a journey because it's not one that would immediately suggest itself to someone. I would have thought.
No, I mean, you sort of pushed into it. I mean, Sahara was a bit of a gamble, but I wanted to see the biggest desert in the world, and I wanted to sort of find out, surely it's not just all desert, there are people who live there, there's people who cross it, there's trade and all that sort of thing. So having done Sahara, and it caught on, I think, because it was such a remote and difficult area to operate in. So after that, ups the stakes. You can't just go and do great swimming pools of the world or something like that. You've got to actually go somewhere quite difficult. And I thought, done the biggest desert, do the longest mountain range.
And there's a book out based on it as well, which I have the hardback, but it's out in paperback for...
It is now in paperback for travellers.
for the chavs.
Yeah,
Oh, the travellers,
yeah,
OK.
Yeah.
You know what, whenever I meet the guys who you're lumped together through your early work, and you always will be, whenever I met any of the other members of the Python, I'm always struck by the fact that you're always doing new things, you're always reading, all you guys. You seem to be such a kind of like, you are an erudite bunch, aren't you?
I think all of us had a good education, and we completely forgot about it and ended up doing comedy and dressing up as men with axes in their head and drag and all that sort of thing. So now we're sort of regaining. It's like being going back to your education many years later and saying, actually, that was quite interesting. Because we used to send up sort of presenters. Television presenters were always sort of sent up in Python shows, as were historians, art critics, anyone who had any knowledge of anything at all.
Let's have a look at Himalayas before I ask you whether or not you missed doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
This is from the series Himalaya, which was a fabulous show. I hope you watched it. I'm sure it will be repeated again and again on UK Travel Gold or something, which is where these shows
Has
always
been,
were.
yeah, one of those, yeah.
Because presumably the BBC would like you to do more of these, and indeed are probably asking you to as we speak.
Yeah, I mean, if it's successful, they want you to do another one, but they're about kind of like 2-year projects, these, by the time you've done the book and all the travel and all the publicity. So you've got to think carefully about doing the next one. And also it's got to be as good as the last one you've done. Himalaya would be a hard one to beat. But I will travel. I mean, someone said there was a report that I was never going to travel again. Which is just crazy. It's like an addiction. You're always travelling somewhere.
Do you have any idea where you might want to go? Because there can't be that many places left that you haven't enjoyed, that you haven't sampled in some way, shape or form.
Well, yeah, there are some parts of South America, Brazil, Argentina,
of course, yeah.
Middle East. I've not been anywhere in the Middle East. I wouldn't mind going there, so keep your head down. Not Iraq, possibly, but everywhere else. And people say Iran is the most fantastic country. And
you know, how about shopping centres?
In Iran or just
in the
anywhere?
UK, because there's some odd life forms out there. You know,
That's
the
what I'm
lesser
doing at the
spotted
moment.
hoodie.
No, I'm doing that at the moment. I'm doing it. Yeah, that's exactly. I'm doing a book signing tour, so it's exactly what I do.
Do you get recognised much when you're away in those remote places, though? Do they know you either from the other travel shows or from Monty Python?
No, I mean, I usually try and go to Palin-free travel zones, because I learnt my lesson when we were doing a thing about on one of the very first Around the World in 80 Days episodes, and we were going up, no, it's actually pole to pole. Oh, it's all a blur. Going up the Norwegian coast, and we're at the very northern part of the Norwegian coast. They say, let's go around the ship and talk to people. Michael, just talk to people, have a little chat. And so I got talking to this lighthouse keeper who said, "They found this guy, he's wonderful, he's the lighthouse keeper of the most northerly lighthouse in the world. So just have a chat to him." So I talked to him, and he's a bit gloomy. And he says, so I say, yeah, it must be terribly difficult for you. You know, 6 months of the year, it's total darkness up here. What do you do? He said, "We watch all your programs on the television." You know, so you just shut, can't say that. But I was recognised in the Himalaya, but not as me. I was having a particularly bad time with a cold and flu, and I was going up Annapurna Trail, and it was getting worse as we got higher and higher. The altitude was kicking in as well, and I couldn't breathe anyway. And so I was climbing up, and I'm going up these steps, and there's a couple of American women sort of sitting at the top of the steps, and they're talking, and suddenly I notice they stop, and one of them sees me. I think I nudge each other. So I sort of try and look healthy, so, you know, pull myself from a full height, sauntered by, and as I went by, I heard one say to the other, "Oh my God, it's Eric Idle!"
Oh, that's a terrible person to be mistaken
Recognised,
for.
but not for myself. Well, when we did the Pythons, we were always interchangeable. I was always Eric or Mike. I mean, John was the only one that people actually recognised.
Because of his grotesque
it's
height.
a new thing. Grotesque and unnatural height. Absolutely extraordinary unnatural.
Do you miss doing that silly stuff, though? Do you miss doing the Python stuff? Because obviously, you know, your warmth and your humour shines through on the shows you do, but it's not the same.
No, but I mean, I mean, Python sort of carries on, which I think is the most amazing thing, that sort of has jumped a generation. There's still people who watch Monty Python, so it's still kind of around, and we still meet up and we still talk, and the happiest times we have is when we're just sort of joking rather than actually sort of having business meetings, which are always slightly more tense. So yeah, I suppose I do miss it, but you know, sort of that was part of one's life you've gone through.
When you were a kid, of course, really, I suppose, or a very young man.
Well, we were quite young, really, in our 20s. Yeah.
Well, you know, there was one, I mean, I loved the Python series on TV, as most people in my generation did. I loved the Python movies as well, but there was one moment in Life of Brian, I think, where, frankly, I think you went a bit too far.
No.
It upset
Just
me.
one bit.
Well,
some people think the whole film was
there was, it caused
far.
a real uproar, didn't it?
Real uproar. It wasn't shown in Swansea for a very, very long time.
It cost me a huge loss. Lovely to spend some time with you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm a huge fan of your recent shows, but obviously Python is something which I just am so enamoured of. It's a fabulous creation, so congratulations.
Thanks.
How lovely to have you. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Palin.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.